Okay, another one of these read alouds for our research simulation lessons. We are wondering what we think about the argument that we should alter summer vacation, and so we went through in the first one of this series and found a bunch of readings that looked like they might have good information for us to make our arguments, and now we're going through a few of them one by one so we can see what we can strip out. So I'm reading this with a purpose in mind. I found it from Pacific Pacific Standard Magazine, which I had never heard of, but I vetted the source and I believe that it's a valid one. And so we're going to read through it, and I am looking for, of course, I'm always looking to understand the central idea of the thing, but I'm also looking for evidence that I might be able to use. Even sometimes if it's not a quotation, it just triggers an idea in me. Why do we still have summer vacation? By Daniel Loser. Forget the argument about a calendar built around an agrarian economy. In the last video, we learned that agrarian means farming, like agriculture. It was urbanization that created summer as we know it, and now we can't imagine doing anything else. Next week begins, in many cases, the 3 month period that is summer vacation from school. For those of us long outside of education and without children of our own, it may be a little hard to recall the sheer joy that is summer vacation. 3 whole months outside of the classroom. Your mother surely got annoyed with your sunburns, the fact that you preferred to spend the day playing video games, and your demands to be taken over to your friends' houses to play. But at least for a few days after school let out in June, did anything on earth seem better? But if, for those children, those 3 months feel like a much needed break from all that hard work, summer vacation really has nothing to do with children at all. It exists, most Americans believe, only because of the early days of the United States. Free primary schools mostly educated the children of farmers. And they needed the kids at home because summer, or well, roughly May to October, is the primary growing season. As Harris Cooper, chairman of the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience at Duke University, explained, the present 9 month calendar emerged when 85% of Americans were involved in agriculture and when climate control in school buildings was limited. But now that only 3% of Americans live on farms, shouldn't we keep them in school for much of the summer? And if there's no need to keep them at home, why aren't they learning for those 3 months? On average, American school children lose the equivalent of about 1 month of instruction over summer vacation, and that's a fact that we saw in the last one too, um, which is good. When we see a fact appear more than once, then we can rely on it more. Although that does not mean it's true. The impact is most dramatic in spelling and math. Indeed, it's one of the simplest concerns of education reformers. Though many school improvement strategies are controversial, paying teachers for performance, providing national preschool programs, this one is pretty widely agreed upon. As Jennifer Davis, president of the National Center on Teaching Time and Learning, said last year, surely eliminating the long summer break by making our school year longer, at least for schools serving poor neighborhoods, seems a ready solution to a problem that has enormously negative implications. Okay, well, this one is actually about just adding days to the school year, which is not what our topic is. And so they're related, but we're only going to be able to strip facts out of here because we are not writing about this topic right now. In 2009, Secretary of Education Arne Duncan said that our school calendar is based upon the agrarian economy, and not too many of our kids are working the fields today. That seems like a good quote. That guy is an expert, and so I want to highlight that, but I can't find the highlighting thing. So I'm just going to highlight that and remember it. There we go. Even one high school student in Connecticut wrote in an editorial for the Hartford Courant that if young children have minds ready to learn, high school students have a vitality that makes them ready to work. And teachers are as capable to work year-round as their non-teacher adult counterparts. Why am I home? Bet he was popular with the other kids. Okay, and that looks like it might be a good source. So I'm going to, when I'm done with this read aloud, I'm going to click on that one and see if that has more ammunition for me. But like making Christmas less commercial or making Congress less partisan, this one is never going to happen. The kids still come home every year despite the fact that no one seems to think that year-round school is a bad idea, and yet no one's pushing to make it happen. In fact, all schools on Earth and all education systems throughout time have had arbitrary and somewhat impractical school plans. In the early American system, not everyone had the same vacation schedules. And our long summer vacation, despite what Arne Duncan says, isn't really based on the agrarian economy. In earlier days, American schools had very different schedules, and it didn't work out so well. As Ken Gold, Associate Professor of Education at the City College of Staten Island, explained to NBR 2 years ago, The academic calendar with a long summer holiday didn't come about until the early 20th century. Previously, urban schools operated year round with short breaks between quarters. In 1842, Detroit's academic year lasted approximately 260 days, New York's 245, and Chicago's 240. But since education wasn't mandatory in most states until the 1870s, attendance was low. Despite the official schedule, many kids ended up spending the same amount of time in school back then as they do now. Brooklyn school officials, for example, reported in 1850 that more than half their students showed up just 6 months a year. This seems like good information that we might want to keep. So we're going to highlight it and wait until we are planning our writing. But it wasn't a desire to keep everyone working on the farm during the summer that caused schools to adopt the 3 month vacation. It was just an effort to standardize schooling across the country. Urbanization created the long summer vacation, not an agricultural economy. If all students had more or less the same schedule, it was easier to administer testing and sell standardized education materials like textbooks. Okay, that seems like a good point too that I had never heard. They wanted the kids to have the same school year so they could make standardized tests and sell textbooks. There's a lot of talk about how America is losing ground in education. The country ranks 27th in high school completion rates among developed nations. According to the 2003 Trends in International Mathematics and Science study, an international test of student knowledge, American fourth graders rank among the top 10 countries in performance in math and science. But by 8th grade, they fall below developing countries like Latvia and the Slovak Republic due to a second-rate education system. Still, no one can demonstrate that we're losing because of summer vacations. One problem with the eliminate summer vacation so we compete with the rest of the world philosophy is that it isn't really a reflection of reality. Arne Duncan a few years ago. Our students there are competing against children in India and China. Those students are going to school 20 to 30% longer than we are. Our students, I think, are at a competitive disadvantage. Not really. Okay, this looks like an argument against. While students in Europe and Asia have many different education schedules, there's a typo. They don't really spend much more time in school. That's because of the distinction between the number of days spent in the classroom and the hours in a day devoted to actual instruction. When one combines these numbers, it appears Americans are spending just as much time in school as students in most other countries. America's students living in some of the most populous states, California, Florida, New York, Texas, Massachusetts, spend about 900 hours a year in school. India requires 8 to 900 instructional hours per year, depending on grade. China, too, provides about 900 hours of instruction per year. The hours of compulsory instruction per year provided to students in other developed countries range from 608 hours in Finland to 926 hours in France. And Finland is the top performing country in terms of education. Its children averaging among the world's best educated students. Okay, so now I'm reading all this and it's very interesting. It's about how many hours kids spend in school a year in different countries and how much they learn. But again, this is not on topic for us. So, again, I'm looking for things about the summer vacation moving it around. School schedules throughout history have varied widely. In 16th century England boys went to school from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. with 2 hours off for lunch, 6 days a week, virtually year-round. In ancient Rome, children, upper-class boys, attended school 7 days a week from sunup to sundown, though there were extensive religious holidays and students didn't attend school on market days. They also appear to have had pretty long summer vacations, probably because it was simply too hot to study. In Egypt today, summer break is often 4 months long, running from the middle of May until the middle of September. In India, summer vacation varies depending on the region. In the northern part of the country, schools end on May 1st and begin again on July 1st. In southern India, school ends on the last week of March and begins in June. Schooling schedules have long been based more on cultural patterns than efficient education strategies. We've run school like this not because it works for education, but because it works for society. That seems like it might be something worth keeping. Education reformers have been trying for almost 50 years. Okay, that's about it being longer. And parents also hated the calendars. Many teachers and school board members found that the new schedule disrupted family lives and vacation planning. Okay, so that is a good argument. The plan was particularly difficult when different schools adopted different schedules in order to pool resources, and families had children on dissimilar school calendars. California also observed that parents had other plans, or simply weren't willing to be around every week from the end of May until the end of August. They wanted to go to the beach, too, at least sometimes. When the Los Angeles School Board, which adopted a year-round schedule in the late 80s, gave schools the option of returning to a traditional schedule, 543 of its 444 schools chose to do so. That seems like a good fact if you don't like this plan. Back in 1971, one survey showed that 84% of people in the country believed that schooling would be year-round by 1986, just 15 years later. This year, right on time, we'll hear more calls for an all-year school system. Ignore them. This will never happen. One middle school teacher, Heather Walpart-Gallren, wrote that teachers are working throughout the summer taking classes and attending conferences or seminars to learn new strategies in order to fill in gaps that might exist in your current curriculum units. Adult humans, she explained, aren't built to spend their days with hundreds of children each day. It takes a lot out of an adult to have their antenna up so high, so often, and so consistently. This looks good too if you don't like the idea. She might be wrong about the facts. Is it really true that teachers are unable to teach effectively without a few months in the summer off? Or highly selective in her presentation of the facts? But she's right about the sentiment. We're not going to school in the summer because we don't want to. We have other plans. Okay. Now this article, the central idea seemed to be that people were missing the point. And even though it wasn't about going to school, it wasn't about going to school at different times. It was about going to school more. And that wasn't exactly our article. There were a lot of good facts and arguments that you could maybe use to build a case, especially if you did not like the new plan. And so that's it.